Hi, this is David Unsworth, English editor of the Pan Am Post. Over the past month, America has been fixated on the issue of NFL protests, specifically players taking a knee before games during the singing of the national anthem. The trend, which began with former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick, has now spread throughout the league and has raised important questions about freedom of speech and the use of sporting events to raise political issues. Team owners and coaches are concerned about the political protests, and the NFL itself is particularly concerned amid signs that viewership, and the advertising revenue that accompanies it, is falling amid a backlash against the protests. Some NFL fans have denounced players for their behavior, claiming that taking a knee is disrespectful to America and its values. Who is on the right side here? And fundamentally, what is a libertarian to make of all this? My perspective here is that the left and the right are getting plenty wrong about this whole issue. Let's start with Donald Trump. As I've noted before, I think that Donald Trump's use of social media, specifically his obsession with Twitter, is counterproductive to someone such as myself who really believes in limited government and quote-unquote draining the swamp, that is to say taking power out of the hands of Washington politicians and putting it back in the hands of the states, in the hands of local governments, and more importantly in the hands of the people. What Trump often does in social media is counterproductive to his agenda. Taking on the NFL and its players and calling them SOBs and so forth and insulting them is counterproductive. I mean, we saw this summer when he had a Twitter war with Morning Joe co-host Mika Brzezinski about a plastic surgery operation gone wrong, and this was right in the thick of things with the healthcare debate. And I said, look, this is not helping. You need 50 votes in the Senate. That's assuming Mike Pence can break a tie. And you have very slim margins here. Trump taking on the NFL, it's unnecessary. It's counterproductive. There are bigger priorities right now. And case in point, even the New England Patriots, a team which has long-standing ties to Trump, the owner Bob Kraft, the coach Bill Belichick, even quarterback Tom Brady, and they all were taken aback by what Trump said. I think the American right, the conservative movement, needs to remember here, quote-unquote, taking a knee is not an assault on the flag, or America, or the national anthem, or the troops, or patriotism. As one of my favorite high school teachers said as well, patriotism can often be the last refuge of the scoundrel. I don't know who coined those words, but it's no less true. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being patriotic, but to suggest that these NFL players taking a knee is somehow denigrating our values or spitting upon or insulting our military, our way of life, I think that's a bit of hyperbole. They are doing this to call attention to the issue of police shootings, specifically police shootings of black men. It's a serious issue, and I'll talk more about that later when I level some due criticism at the left. But they're not burning a flag. They're not shouting "Death to America." They're not saying this country is just the epitome of racism. Although I from time to time, an NFL player, another professional athlete, I think, does take too dismal a view of America with regard to racial issues. We certainly are not perfect. We never have been. We've made some serious and shameful mistakes in our past, but we really strive to be a place where everyone, regardless of race, class, gender, ethnicity, and so forth, has economic and social and political opportunities, we do a reasonably good job with that. Obviously, there is some room for improvement. What the left and the right should really realize here is that this is fundamentally a First Amendment issue, but it's also a workplace issue. And the fundamental question here for, say, an attorney or a court of law or a judge, where do the First Amendment rights of employees, that is the NFL players, end, and the rights of employers, that is the team owners or the coach who has been entrusted to run the team by the team owners, where do those rights begin? So, we hear a lot about the First Amendment rights and how, in the United States, we may have the greatest First Amendment freedoms of just about anywhere in the world. The NFL stadiums, by and large, are private. They're privately owned. Now, you could play the devil's advocate here and say that a lot of them are also publicly financed, and that's true. So, but by and large, they're private, or there's some kind of private and public partnership, and you don't have unlimited First Amendment rights in any private space or in any workplace or in any corporate environment. I mean, it's the same principle that applies if you go into a Donald Trump rally or a Hillary Clinton rally and you hold up a sign, Trump is a Nazi, or lock up crooked Hillary. Well, you don't have First Amendment rights. You do on the street in front of the rally, but you don't in the campaign venue. They have paid for that space, and it's a private space. So it is the same issue here. Were I an NFL team owner, that it sounds like a dream job to me. Unfortunately, I'm not an NFL team owner, but I personally don't see a huge problem with some players taking a knee during the national anthem. Now, other coaches or team owners, particularly on the political right, might see a big problem with it. They might make more of it than I would. But it's fundamentally an issue for the team owners. They invested their capital, a substantial amount of money, hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars, into buying these teams. The NFL players work for the team owner. So this is really a labor law issue. And that kind of leads us to the NFL's perspective in all this. The NFL is by far the largest sports league in the United States. It's a multi-billion dollar industry. And the NFL is, somewhat tries to be apolitical. There have been allegations, actually, that the NFL is more on the political left. For example, several years ago, Rush Limbaugh tried to become part of a consortium, part of a group that wanted to buy the St. Louis Rams. And the NFL took a rather strong stand against him, claiming that because of his conservative views, he was too controversial to be involved in the ownership of an NFL team. But the bottom line here is the NFL may start feeling the pressure here. The NFL obviously depends on ratings to sell advertising. That's how they make their money. And economic pressure may lead the NFL to clamp down on political protests at football games if advertisers start walking and ratings drop. And I think it's important to remember here, the NFL is wildly popular with a black urban audience. It's also wildly popular in the American heartland, Trump country, red America. It's you think American football, you think the Midwest, Texas, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma. Football is America's sport. It's uniquely American. It's only played in America. Although I understand there's Canadian Football League, there's the European Football League, and so forth. But really, it's an American institution. So obviously, the NFL fans, the NFL viewership may actually trend a bit more conservative than your average American or the league itself and the league's ownership and management. So more than anything, I think a lot of people feel that politics and sports should be kept separate. I don't particularly. I don't watch the New England Patriots because I want Tom Brady to tell me about pressing social justice issues or who I should vote for president or Senate or the House of Representatives. I don't go see movies because I want Kevin Spacey or Tom Cruise or Julia Roberts telling me their views about economic issues or environmental issues. I don't listen to music for that reason. I think a lot of people, and that includes probably a lot of players, a lot of coaches, a lot of team owners, and a lot of fans themselves, would just like to see this whole issue go away. I mean, I understand that NFL players or baseball players, basketball players, they are, in some sense, role models for young Americans. That's always been the case. That's probably always going to be the case. But nonetheless, this is entertainment. Football, American football or baseball or any other sport, it's entertainment. And I think there's something incongruous, and I think a majority of Americans would agree. It would actually be very interesting to take a poll on this subject. What is your view of athletes, musicians, actors, actresses who push their political agenda, or if you want to make it a bit, more neutral sounding, who share their political views with their audience? I think in general, it's not, although I can appreciate to a certain extent what these NFL players are doing, perhaps this is not the best forum for them to try to bring about social or political or economic change. And finally, to address the concerns of these players and to level some criticism at the American left here, if you look into the numbers, it is simply not accurate to say that there is an epidemic of police shooting of unarmed black men. The Washington Post has extensively studied this. Last year, for example, 2016, there were 16 unarmed black men killed by police in America. Now, that is a serious problem. However, there are 20 million black men in America. There were 16 killed by police. There are also, if you look into the statistics, there are a lot of people of every racial and ethnic background that are shot by police. But it's the numbers as a percentage of the population are quite small. Now, when it comes to police shootings, I take it as a civil libertarian very seriously. A couple of months ago, I wrote an article about Philando Castile, who was a black man who was shot in Minnesota by the police after he informed them that he had a gun. He had a permit for it. He had a constitutional right to carry that. What I often ask myself is, what would it take to turn the Black Lives Matter movement into libertarians? Because in some sense, they're motivated by the issues that we as civil libertarians care about. They raise some legitimate points. Who will police the police? If a police officer is doing his job poorly, if there are serious issues, it's the police department itself, that the Internal Affairs Bureau or whatnot, that has to replace him, that has to fire him. I went to college in St. Louis, and I attended some meetings of kind of left-leaning groups because I wanted to hear what they had to say. And one of the things that they talked about extensively was the idea of civilian review boards. So in every police precinct, you have a board of people who assess something such as a police shooting, I'm all in favor of this kind of thing. We need checks and balances. We need some civilian oversight. No one is above the law. But I think what the people like the so-called social justice warriors need to remember, when it comes to police shootings, you need to take every case on its individual merits. For example, the shooting of Philando Castile, I think, was a travesty. I do think that officer should have faced charges. He was acquitted. There was a case in North Charleston, South Carolina, where a black man was shot in the back by an officer as he was running away after a traffic stop. Again, completely unnecessary. An unarmed man who was not threatening the officer in any way. Then again, the Washington Post has also looked into the Michael Brown case and has concluded that with certainty that Michael Brown was reaching for the officer's gun in question, and that the mantra of hands up, don't shoot is, it was not accurate. It was fundamentally untrue. The officer did not shoot Michael Brown with his hands up. He shot Michael Brown as Michael Brown was reaching for his gun. Now, it's a tragic case. It's a very sad case, but I think the media often sensationalizes these issues to make a political point. The bottom line here is that, yes, there should be civilian oversight of the police. There should be safeguards and measures in place to ensure that police officers are doing their jobs. The city of Seattle actually implemented some kind of program recently, which was basically de-escalation was the principle. The principle that instead of trying to ratchet up tension, the whole idea is to calm people down. Don't reach for your weapon if it's not necessary. Talk before shooting and so forth. But there is no doubt about it that there are times when police are going to have to use lethal force. Most of the time, it's probably justified. There's many times when it isn't. And we as civil libertarians, if we see instances like that, we should say something. But to suggest that for the political left or for these NFL players to suggest that there's just an epidemic of police in America shooting unarmed black men, it's just not accurate. And I will post a link here at the bottom of this to the statistics that the Washington Post is reporting. This is a matter of public record, and 16 black men last year shot by the police. That's 16 too many, but it's not 16,000 or 1,600 or 160. So finally, as libertarians, we come from a different place on political and social and economic issues. We have plenty to agree and disagree with respect to both the left and the right. So, and with regard to Donald Trump, I think he's had enough to say about this. I think he should move on. Let's move on. Let's take a look at healthcare. Let's take a look at tax reform. Let's take a look at our foreign policy. More than anything, let's get back to draining the swamp. That's what libertarians who voted for Trump voted for him to do. Not to worry about some NFL players taking a knee before NFL football games. This has been David Unsworth with the Pan Am Post English podcast.